Community is messy, isn't it? If you've been leading for any length of time, you've probably experienced some mess. You've had some people bring some things into your group, into your ministry, into your life that are just messy. You've had some people fight with one another and make it messy. You've Heather talked about, when you create mess. You can ask Chris Gerald about my ability to create relational mess. Chris and I love each other, but I've created some mess in that relationship. Heather talked about this a little bit. I'd probably expand on it from a little bit different angle. Community is not only messy, but community helps us work through our mess. Community is a place where we can take the mess in our lives and get it out in the open and begin to heal, begin to get that mess cleaned up. One of my favorite parts of my job, probably my very favorite part of my job, is the opportunity that I have just to sit down with small group leaders and talk with them. And I especially love it when I get to talk with them about the good things that God is doing in their lives and in their groups. And for about a week or two this January, that was a big focus of mine, and I had a whole bunch of meetings with a whole bunch of different leaders. And ask them for stories. Ask them for stories of the good things that were happening, the good things that God was doing. And I want to share a couple of those with you right now. I think they're great examples of how God can take our mess and use community to transform it and to heal it. The first story is the story of Marcela and Gina. Marcela was from Brazil and moved to the States about 12 years ago. And when she got here, there was just a huge cultural adjustment. She was away from family and friends, and actually at the time she didn't even know the language. And of course the customs were just incredibly different than what she was used to. And she eventually adjusted to those things and made friends and was going to school, and it was good. And then she moved to D.C. after that, after she was done with her schooling. And this was relatively recently, a few months ago, I think, maybe a year and a half ago. And once again, set in this profound sense of loneliness. There weren't the cultural things to deal with this time, but there was just this fact of no one knows me and I don't know anyone. And I don't have people there who share my beliefs and share my faith. And I think all of us can identify with that, right? Or at least, I shouldn't say all of us, most of us. Most of us have moved to Washington, D.C. from somewhere else. Somewhere where we knew people and we were rooted and grounded, to this other place where things were kind of different, where our families weren't there for us, where we didn't have friends, where our jobs were highly charged and very demanding. We had to figure out how to adjust to this. We had to make new friends. We had to find new communities. Well, Marcela started attending NCC through the recommendation of a friend she'd had from school, and she found the Rosalind Young Professionals group on the NCC website after she started coming to church, and she began attending that. And one of the things that the leaders of that group, Davina and Adam, have people do is to just share their story and share who they are and where they come from and how they know Jesus and why they love Jesus and all that stuff. And one night, a girl named Gina was sharing, and she talked about how she had come from Colombia, and she was wrestling with some of just the difficulties of being in a new culture and in a new place. And Marcela said, that's exactly the stuff that I dealt with. I know exactly how she feels. I know what she's going through. And she was able to come alongside Gina and walk with her and be there for her and help talk her through things. And in turn, in Gina, Marcela found someone who filled that need for community, who filled that need for friendship and relationship, that God-given need. When God created Adam, he said, "It is not good for man to be alone," and so he created Eve. Yeah, there was a marital component to that, but part of it was just the need for community and the need for people. And Marcela and Gina were able to find that together. They were able to find a relationship of discipleship and of accountability. They now meet and do devotionals together and seek God and grow with one another in their faith. Another story that a couple of leaders told me was about a girl who came to D.C. Just for a semester. She was a college student, and came and found NCC and found their group and began attending. And at one point during the group, when they were taking prayer requests, the girl talked about how her mom had been evicted from her apartment, or from her house, and was actually living in a hotel. And then when she went home for the holidays, this hotel was going to be the only home she had to go to. And the group was able to rally around her, to support her, to be with her in this difficult time, to pray for her, to encourage her. But more than that, they actually began to help her financially. They were able to send gift cards to her mom, to places like Walmart and the grocery store, to make sure that the basic necessities were taken care of. They were able to truly be the hands and feet of Christ and show love to this girl who was a part of their community, even though she had only been there for a couple of months. I don't know about you, but stories like that excite me. Stories like that really, really get my juices flowing. They make me glad to be able to be a part of community here at NCC. And yeah, some of these come from mess and a place of maybe loneliness or brokenness or need. Some of the stories just come. They're just part of what it is to be in a relationship. One of the most exciting stories that I've heard is there's a couples group led by Trent and Melissa Flood and Eric and Heidi Ross in Northern Virginia, and they realized that their group was really working when one day after group, all the couples had out their cell phones. And they were getting each other's phone numbers so that they could make sure that they could connect throughout the week and be able to get in touch with one another and talk and share life. And that's how they knew that their group was a win. Think for a minute, you've probably got some of these stories of your own. Some of them might be more dramatic even than some of these. Some of them are probably less dramatic and are just little anecdotes of community, of Christian community and people coming together to share with one another and love one another. There are three types of people at NCC. There are people who are involved in small groups, who by and large, not maybe all of them, but by and large, have this community. They have people in their lives who care for them, who they are able to care for, people to invest in them, and they're able to invest in others. There's a second group of people who have that through people that they know from church, people in their neighborhood, other relationships they have from work, whatever it is. They have that community and they have those relationships of discipleship. But it's not in any official form. It's an organic thing, and that's great. And we celebrate that and we encourage that. And if people are in those things, we don't want to try to drag them out of those things and say, you need to be in a small group over here. But there's a third group of people. They're not in any sort of official community, any official group that we have. They're not really in any sort of organic Christian community. They're just kind of there. They're a part of our church community, of the larger community. But they're not in a smaller and a more intimate setting where they can truly know others and truly be known. I think of a guy, I call him Tim. It's not his real name, but he's been on one of our ministry teams for about a year and a half. And some of our ministry teams are great communities, and they're just places where people bond and grow and friendships are made. And other ones, they're more about just the task that's getting done. And this ministry team that Tim's been on for a year and a half is more just about getting the task done. And I don't know Tim well, so I guess I could be wrong about this. But I am an acquaintance, and I talk with him pretty regularly at church. And I don't think that between Sunday at noon, when he finishes serving, and 8 a.m. the next Sunday when he shows back up to serve, that he talks to anyone from church. I've never heard him say that I'm having people over for the big game, that my small group's meeting on Wednesday night. Never heard him say that I'm going out to dinner with some friends from NCC. He's just kind of there on his own. He doesn't have people who know him and who can be there for him in the mess of life and in the excitement of life, who can mourn when he mourns, but also celebrate when he celebrates a new job or a promotion, celebrates an engagement or a wedding or a child. He's just out there. And by the same token, he then isn't able to invest his time and talents and resources and the insight and wisdom and experiences that God has given him in others. And so as a result of that, there's a community out there that could be a little bit better if he were in it, and if it had his perspective and his insight. And so over the next year, it's my goal, and it's a major initiative on Team D, to help multiply these stories that I've just mentioned, and the stories that are in your heads and in your groups and in your lives, into people who don't have them yet, into people who don't have the opportunity for those stories. Now, in order to accomplish this, we're going to be doing a lot of things to try to engage them, to try to show them the importance of this and the good things that God can do through them. But we're going to need your help to do it. Specifically as leaders, what we need you to do is to be intentional about discipling people into leadership. If we're at all successful, even mildly successful at this, at getting people engaged in community, we're going to need people to help lead those communities. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a bunch of big groups instead of small groups. A bunch of groups of 25 where people aren't known and don't know others well. Now, you probably heard me talk about this a little bit before, and you're saying, yeah, but there's no one in my group who's qualified to lead. You might be right. But Jesus didn't tell us, as Heather said, Jesus didn't tell us to go and find disciples. He told us to go and make disciples. Go and take people who aren't ready and aren't prepared and don't love Jesus enough and say, follow me as I follow Christ, and turn them into people who are prepared and are equipped and are ready and who love Jesus more. That's the mandate that Christ gives us. And so that's the challenge that I'm presenting to you today, is to find people who you can disciple, some of whom will then be in a position to step into leadership and begin to disciple others. That's what we're called to, especially as leaders, but even just as Christ followers. Even outside of any official leadership position or title you have, but just as Christ followers, we are called to go and make disciples. Now, some of you may be saying, I don't know how to do that. And that's okay. We're going to help you. We're going to equip you. We're going to be there to talk to you. We're going to be there to cry with you and to laugh with you, to give you advice and to just give you a listening ear. That's why we're here. That's why we have coaches and coordinators. That's why we have a training team that can help teach these skills. But you've got to commit to doing it. You've got to commit to being a part of the solution, to helping disciple others so that more and more people can step into community where they can have these stories of healing, these stories of hope, these stories of excitement and of celebration. So that's my challenge to you today. At the center of your table, there's a little card. And on it, it just says, I commit to discipling others into leadership. If that's something that you're willing to do, I just want you to take that and write your name on it. The band's going to come up and play. And you'll have a few minutes to think and reflect and pray. And I'm going to challenge you to do it. Now, maybe some of you, God has a word for and says, I don't want you doing this. And if so, then I don't want you to do it. But for the vast majority of us, God's not going to tell us that because He's already told us in Scripture that it's our job to make disciples. And this is just committing to that and agreeing to focus on that and agreeing to be intentional about that. And in doing so, you'll have resources brought to you. You'll be trained in order that you can do it more effectively. So as the band comes up, I'm going to pray for us. And I'm going to encourage you to take a moment and reflect and think. Once you're done, once you once you feel like you've spent a little bit of time with God. And then after that, our breakouts will start at 1:30. There's information on those in your packets. Would you pray with me?